Welcome to Chronicles of Transformative Change and Impact, where we navigate the path from vision to impact, one story at a time. I am your host, Carol Reese, and on this show, we uncover the personal quests and powerful stories of individuals and communities who are making a real difference. Join us as we explore journeys of transformation, innovation, and empowerment. Get ready to be inspired, challenged, and motivated to create your own impact. Today's guest is none other than Robert Dortch.
And I'm going to let him introduce himself to you so you can find out why I believe that he is the man.
Well, Carol Reese, it is an amazing opportunity. I'm so happy to be with you in the Chronicles of Transformation, Change, and Impact.
Yes,
And I'm thankful for the opportunity. I am Robert Dortch, a native son of Richmond, Virginia, and I am the principal strategic consultant for Jordan Sydnor Innovation.
Okay, so tell me a little bit about what that really entails for those who don't know.
So Jordan Sydnor Innovation Group, the name comes from my two grandmothers.
Okay.
One is named Thelma Sydnor. That was her maiden name, and Lucy Jordan.
Okay.
They were my grandmothers, and because they were such an influence and inspirational presence in my life, I named the company after them, and so that they will always be with me, remind me of what my responsibilities are, many of the lessons they taught me. So Jordan Sydnor comes from my two grandmothers, and innovation is the work that I do. Is really about change, agility, and helping people to think differently about how they address the issues and solve the problems, and how they maximize their engagement and performance and become their better selves as leaders or as teams or individually in their personal and professional life.
Oh, wow. That is awesome. I love the legacy, right? Because it's the company name is taking the legacy forward that you glean from. That is awesome.
So, I mean, for me, I think about my grandparents are very instrumental in my life. And so legacy is important in the sense that it was always for understand who you are,
right?
Understand where you come from, the importance of faith, understanding, believing in a power bigger than yourself, and then understanding you have a responsibility to make a difference.
Yeah. Right. And your name means something. My grandma said, don't embarrass me.
Yeah.
Because everybody know who you belong to, right? You better not go out there embarrassing, because you're going to get it from every side. Yeah.
Well, yeah. I mean, my grandfather, my grandparents, I remember my grandfather would just teach me a lot of lessons about life. I remember him taking me on a bus one time, and on the bus, I was going to the back of the bus, and he said, Buddy, which was my nickname, because I spent so much time with my grandparents and with my father. They called me like their little buddy. And he said, Buddy. And I was going to the back because the big boys were in the back.
Right, because the cool kids.
Yeah, we're in the back. And he said, Buddy. He said it in a way, it was like, oh.
It wasn't a regular buddy. It was like, stop. Right.
And he motioned me to the front of the bus and to set the time. Him, I was like a bunch of old people.
Yeah, yes.
They got the baskets and stuff. And then we went to the peanut store, Planter's Peanut Store.
Okay.
I'll never forget it. Wow. And then from there, he took me to the state capitol, and we sat on the bench. And he said, do you understand why I didn't let you sit in the back of the bus? He said, too many people died and sacrificed. So I never want you to sit in the back of the bus, back of the classroom, because you have a responsibility to carry on the legacy of Christ, to sacrifice for you to be able to go to schools, to sit, live, work. And my grandfather did that. So that's important for me. Legacy is an important part of it.
That is awesome. Because a lot of young people don't realize the culture of their history and how it builds them and shapes them. I learned my great lessons from my grandmother. And my grandmother was like let your work speak for you. Therefore, you ain't got to tell nobody what you do or how well you do it. That was her motto. And I lived by that, going to high school. I was always in the front, like here, I'm in the front, of everything. My mom said, hold your head up high. It could be the worst day. Hold your head up high. And you better not have your head bowed down. It was a whole thing for her because of her struggle and walking and being proud of who we were just because of who we were. We didn't have a lot, but we gleaned a lot from past. And my grandmother was a hard worker. We said my grandmother's house, you're going to work. That was it. You're getting up in the morning, you're going to make your bed. That's the last time you saw that bed all day. and you're going to work all day. I love that part of your story. But we're talking today about our love journey, right? Learning to love ourselves. And I want to applaud you because it's challenging to get men to talk about this piece, right? Women talk about it because we go through so many challenges and changes. It's not until we really identify who we are in love that we become who we're supposed to be. So tell me about your journey and what started it. I'm so interested.
Wow, you jumped like, okay, Carol, you jumped right.
I do.
You
Reel me back in. Reel me back in if you have to.
I think it goes back to what you were saying about what you learned from, your grandmother and how we make the most of what we have. And so the reality is I grew up in an environment of love. Right. Like my grandparents and my parents, they loved me. So I grew up like you said, you make the most of what you had. And it's not like I didn't have a lot. I told people like where I grew up at, people would say, oh, that was a low wealth community. Yet I was surrounded with love. Like the way my grandfather talked to me, the way he treated me, the way I saw him and my grandmother together, like her laying her head on his shoulder, or like, like I never heard him say a profane word to her and to me. And so like I grew up in a space of, of love. And then yet I'm in a community where I saw like, even I think about like growing up in the city of Richmond and Blackwell, and like being at the basketball court, and when things are getting ready to go down, the older cats be like, no, we got to get them out of here. This is not for you.
Okay.
Right. Okay. So that they protected me.
Wow.
And they saw something in me, even though I may not have seen that in myself.
Okay.
And so that I think I grew up in an environment of love. And yet at the same time, a lot of the messages that we see and we receive, especially about Black men, is something opposite, of that. And like, oh, okay, you got to be tough. And so then I did get some other messages about like, don't be a crybaby. You got to be strong. You got to be tough. And so then I did take on some of that.
Yeah. Okay.
I took on some of that posturing, because you say, hey, I don't want somebody to I don't want somebody to punk me. Those kinds of things, which you don't even realize they're toxic.
Right.
And harmful to you as you're growing up and you're taking on this, what we call this masculine posture, which I took some of that. I took some of that on, even though I had grown up in a space where, like I said, my grandfather, the way he treated me, I saw him treat my grandmother, was a space of love, and yet there was these competing images and messages that I was, that I was wrestling with. And so I think I've been on that journey for, a while. I think what happens is, one, falling in love, like where you remember like your first love and what that looks like, getting married. And then I think one of the biggest things for me about love was witnessing both of my sons being born.
Oh, wow.
And witnessing them being born, it changed me in a lot of ways.
Yeah.
When you see these beings come into the world and realize you're now responsible for them, and like they become the most important thing in the world.
Yes, the responsibility doesn't end. I talked to both my girls, work it out. Okay.
And so
yes,
that I think that was a part of me migrating and beginning to evolve in love and having my sons and allowing them to see me in my vulnerability.
Ooh.
Right, because a lot of times we want them to see us like as super like heroes.
Right.
Like that's my dad.
Right.
Yet I had to learn to let them see my vulnerability.
Okay. Now let's stay there for a second, because growing up in an environment that's love, going out into the world and seeing it through a different lens, because as men are men, they see masculinity in a different view, which depending on their background, right? So here you have 3-4 sides of information, and you navigate through, right? Because, one thing grandmas always say, you're straight, but you always come back, right? Because you know your roots, you know where you come from.
Yeah.
So now as you're helping and your sons are here, how would you help them navigate that and still have that cornerstone of love and vulnerability and helping them understand this journey? Because you have won this journey and you brought them into this journey, but the world is not like that.
Well, so I think the world is yes and no.
Yeah.
I mean, the world there's a duality that exists in the world. I think part of it is modeling.
Okay.
Saying how do you model love?
Right.
And I think sometimes I've done it well.
Okay.
Sometimes not so well.
Yeah.
I think it's acknowledging.
Right.
How do we model that?
Okay.
How do we acknowledge that? I think how do we discuss what does love look like?
What does love look like?
And what is the vision? What is the vision for loving, as we say, how do I love, myself?
Right.
As a person of faith is saying, okay, how do I love God? And how do you model the great commandment of loving God with all of yourself and loving your neighbor as yourself? How do you model that?
Right.
What does that look like in today's world? When you have all of these competing images and messages, how do you talk about that?
How do you talk about it?
How do you, how do you discuss that? And with my sons, we did like a rite of passage when they were like turning 13, where they would wake up and they would every morning meet with me and we would discuss like, they would do like essays. One of my sons would video stuff. Another one would write stuff. They could ask me any questions they wanted, songs. And then I had men who have been a part of their lives write them letters that said that they would support that. So then that was to give them a resource and a tool to support them and help them as they evolved and to manhood and defining their path.
Okay.
And so as they talk about their visions for their lives, it's like, okay, how can I support you and love you in that? And then who are the other men
your village
could do that? Right. And so whether it's, uncles, coaches, teachers, and I think that's another thing about what support system that we put in place. Because at a certain point, sometimes they're not listening to they weren't listening to me. Or they upset with me about something. And you're not having to deal with, to deal with that and to deal with your own humanity. I told me, and I say, let your children, especially your son, see your humanity.
Right.
And they saw that when their mother and I, went, divorced, went, separate ways. And then how do we still love them? And still, how do we show respect? How, as a man, I still show respect for their mother, friend who was so instrumental in my life.
You gotcha.
And so I think that was the thing of just showing them and walking through that. And then at the same time, being able to love myself when I, make mistakes or that, and being able to acknowledge that.
Right.
Whether ask for forgiveness, which is another form of
Yes, self-forgiveness. That's a challenge, right? Because we all do things and sometimes we hold on to the thing and not the object of forgiving ourselves to allow ourselves to move on. And so as a man, that's a little different, your perspective. So thank you so much for sharing it with me. I mean, I think this is going to be great for the listeners because we have a lot of single fathers out there who are trying to figure it out. And I think right now we have the highest number of single fathers that we've ever had for various reasons, as men are trying to navigate those waters when they didn't come from a background and they're trying to create to simulate something in which you had and creating that village of strong men to help them, to lead them, to guide them. What advice would you give? What direction would you give?
So what I would say is when we talk about acknowledgement, I think being willing to ask for help. Right. So it's interesting. And I thank my father for this. I lost a niece to domestic violence. And with that, though, going to therapy and being able to ask for help and say, hey, I need help. So I encourage brothers to be able to ask for help. I encourage brothers to reach out and stay in communication, with, your friends, like with my fraternity brothers and with those who are part of my life. Stay engaged. Be willing to ask for help. Whether, like I said, therapy, because the therapy was taboo at one time.
Yeah, you couldn't even talk about it. That's your man.
In the Black sphere, and I think that's important. That's becoming, more acceptable. I think that's important for our mental health, for our emotional health, and yet I think it's important in our relationships with our partners, those who love us, those who we love, and then also for our children. It's important to say it's okay to ask for help as we're trying to grow.
Right.
Because the reality is we are trying to grow to get better. And it goes back to say, what is your vision for your life? And to be able to live your best life.
Right.
And to do it in the way that we are called and created to do it. Sometimes you need help, and to be able to ask for help.
Yes. And a lot of times, as you alluded to, men don't know how to ask for help. Right. And when they're asking for help, it seems as if they feel it takes away from their masculinity or their ability to do the job, right? I have a nephew who is a single parent of a son. He's very challenged when it comes to taking advice or coaching or anything like that.
Well, this is what I would say. And, I'm asked this as a coach, as a consultant, as a father, as, a friend. And I say one of the things you should not ask people is what's wrong with you.
Okay, go ahead. Let's deep.
Because when you say what's wrong, it's automatically saying something. You're not doing something.
Okay.
So instead of saying how are you, what's going on, versus saying what's wrong. Because if I'm showing emotion, and you say what's wrong, that means you're now. I feel like you're judging my emotion.
Okay.
Right. Or if I'm doing something, you say what I'm a little detached or moved. What's wrong? Instead of saying what's wrong, to say what's going on.
What's going on? Okay.
How are you doing?
Right.
Is that what's happening? What are you thinking about right now?
Right. Okay.
Versus saying, because by saying wrong, that means that can feel like judgment to me. So I say, we want to think about the language we use,
and how we say
and how we say it, because then that can impact how a brother responds to you.
That's a great nugget, because I'm gonna take that nugget, because I don't know. I'm old school, very old school. I'll come in like, so I'm learning to really, I'm learning to be an active listener. I've been a listener to resolve and to fix. So I'm trying not to be that kind of listener. And it's challenging, because that's my role in my life. My entire life is fix it. Come here, do that, and I'm so, and then with a lot of young men and being fathers, I'm like, why y'all making it so hard? It's different. I know. And it's not that they're making it hard. It's just that as a woman, I'm seeing it in a different perspective, I suppose.
So I would ask you this. Do you always want someone to fix something for you?
No, not always.
So it's not, a lot of times it's not about fixing.
Right.
It's about like, how do we show up?
Right.
And how do we listen to each other? Right? Like, how can we be present for each other? And how can we listen to each other? And how can we learn from each other? So a lot of times, just like when we're told, like, when they said, his sisters say, I don't want you to fix it. I just want to be heard.
I just want to be heard. Yeah.
And so I think sometimes that's really it. That someone wants to know someone cares.
Right.
Someone is present, and that you hear me, and that you may help me think through it on how I can fix it. And right now, I might not need to fix it. I just might want to just vent and let it go. I just want to place it somewhere, and you can help me to process that and think about it.
A safe place.
Right.
Okay.
And and I think that's what brothers are looking for. Okay. Right? I think a part of being able to love ourselves to say, is there a safe space? Because that's, I ask myself, like, people say, oh, you're successful. This is like, okay, where's a safe space where I can go and be vulnerable? Where can I lay my head? Where can I take my challenge?
Right. Where can I lay and throw a tantrum? Because sometimes I just want to throw a tantrum.
Well, yeah, and I can't. Sometimes you want to, get in and go there. You want to go there.
Yeah.
But I think that's, and knowing that I still can be loved.
Right.
In the midst of my humanity, that you will still love me. Right. Because we realize, like, whether we realize in business or in life, we're not perfect. Life is not perfect. And we're learning.
Right.
And do we have a space to be able to learn and grow, even at this point?
Even at this point in life, right? It's a continual process of learning for me, right? I find that I'll be 60 this year. I'm so excited. I'm excited. Because, I turned 50. I was like, When I turned 60, the word already. I'm almost, at the age where the old people say anything they want. You know what I'm saying? That's what I want to be.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
And
What are you trying to say?
Whatever I want, I can say whatever I want. Yeah, exactly. I'm trying to say the freedom that comes with self-love, understanding who you are and whose you are, gives you a certain perspective, right? Where we are carrying all of this baggage from different journeys that we've had, right? Who I was in the 1900s is new who I've been in the 2000s. It's not even who I was yesterday, right? And that's supposed to be evolving and changing. Yes. But I do notice that sometimes we get stuck and we see peers get stuck, right? And I know everybody's on their journey at a different point. And as we have discussed, everybody doesn't want to be faced, they just want to be heard sometimes. But in the journey that you're on, how have you helped those you've seen stuck? You see they're stuck. How do you help them become unstuck, or to see that they're stuck, or to be that person that they can come to sound off that they're?
Well, I mean, sometimes it's just, like I said, being present for a person and saying what's happening. I always ask, where you trying to go? Like, what's your vision?
Right.
And as you talk about that, is beginning to say, okay, with that, how to get there? How do you see yourself getting there?
Gotcha.
And now the question is, how can I help you? And what commitments are you willing to make?
Okay.
Right.
Okay.
So you got to understand the commitments, and then you help people with practices, right? Like for me, I've had to have, it's like I tell people with freedom, to be free, you have to have discipline. Discipline leads to freedom.
Yes, it does.
Discipline, consistency, commitment leads to freedom. It's not enough to dream about something. The question becomes, what are you committed to doing?
Right.
What does it require from a discipline, from a practice standpoint? And so for me, like you talked about, hey, you got to make that bed up.
Right.
You know what I'm saying? Like the idea of making the bed up every day, right? So you help people to get little wins, and little wins over time lead up to big wins, because it's really about developing habits.
Yes.
And when you develop the habits, things become, they elevate, they accelerate, they amplify, because once you develop the habits and you consistency, then that's about the muscle memory. And you get that muscle memory in place, then you're not thinking about it. You're going automatic. And once you're going automatic, things begin to take off. You're still learning, but there are things you're doing automatically. Like automatically, I get up in the morning and there are things that I say. Right. Yeah. There are mantras that I say.
Right.
I promise myself to be so strong that nothing can disturb my peace of mind.
Ooh, I like that.
I had the sunny side of everything and make my optimism come. Be it only of the best, work only for the best, expect only the best. Learn from and let go of mistakes of the past, and press on to the greater achievements of the future. I will spend so much time on improving myself. I have no time to criticize others.
Great, I love it.
Faith that the whole world is on my side, so long as I'm true to the best that is in me. I say that 3 times.
Wow.
I do a breathing exercise, box breathing, 4-4-4-4. Right.
Tell me about what box breathing was. That?
The box breathing, where you're breathing in 4, 2, 3, 4, hold 4, 2, 3, 4, release 4, 1, 2, 3, 4, relax 4, and then you do it again. Right, because the idea of what breathing does.
Right.
That the power in our breath, right? It helps us to be present, right? So then, I breathe, right?
Right.
And then, after that, I have my gratitude. I got a gratitude journal, and I'm writing things that I'm grateful for.
Right. Yeah.
It could be something simple or big. Like, I'm grateful for this opportunity, right?
Yes.
To be able to connect and to share with you at your busy and this is so. I'm grateful. So then I take time to gratitude.
Okay.
Right. Okay. Then I take time to read. I say time to read something because I think we have to continue to carry on the sharp, keep our mind sharp. So then I read and I do prayer, mindfulness, meditation. Like I use Insight Timer.
Okay.
I say the Lord's Prayer. That's why I pray. And then I do some form of movement, some form of exercise.
Okay.
Right.
Okay.
Like that. Yeah. That's another thing you do.
Right.
Get some mineralized water, hydrated. Want to make sure I'm hydrated, and I'm ready to start my day.
Awesome.
Right.
So that's all done before you start your day.
Yes.
That is I'm tired.
Yes.
Right.
Well, no,
That's
that's the thing that
awesome.
gets you, because then you're
Right. You're ready. You're ready.
then
Yeah.
you're ready. And then,
Yeah.
you know, of course, I've set goals for the day,
Yeah.
right?
Awesome.
So, like right now, I have a 5-year plan. Like I have
Okay.
a plan that's what happens between now and Johnny 29.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah. But I'm thinking about, okay, what has to happen? Not just,
Every day to get
you
there.
know, what happens this year that I need to do,
Mhm.
what happens quarterly, what happens
Mhm.
weekly, what
Mhm.
happens daily. So you set goals,
Right.
move towards,
Right.
you know, that. And that's the kind of thing I help people with.
Okay.
So, okay, how do you, you know, to coach people on what they're trying to do and say, okay, how can I help you to do that, to live your best life?
Awesome. So that leads me right back into your business, right?
Okay.
So what is your ideal client? If you're looking for clients, who are you looking for in your client? What kind of client
So
are you looking for?
clients who are committed to wanting to be their best, right?
Okay.
Whether it's leading their organization,
Mhm.
leading a team,
Mhm.
leading their family, leading in the community, or leading themselves.
Okay.
And so my thing at Jordan Sydnor is like, hey, I'm a creative force for good. So as a creative force for good, how do I help you? Either through, if I speak as a keynote, I'll come in and speak to, you know, corporations and speak at conferences and do those things, or coaching. So, and I coach executives. I coach CEOs. I coach presidents. I coach senior executives. I coach executive teams. I coach executive directors. So people who are in the C-suite, CEOs, presidents, executive directors, nonprofit leaders, philanthropic leaders, corporate leaders. That's where I am. And then I do a lot of strategic consulting.
Okay.
And the strategic consulting is around innovation, right? Innovation and change.
Okay.
Because I help people to say, okay, you want to be able to see change, that's vision, lead change, that's strategy, adapt to change, that's about agility and flexibility, and not get left behind by change. That's being able to manage risk, right? So innovation and change, and helping folks to be able to do that in their organization, especially in these dynamic times, right? When you see things that are changing, dealing with helping people to lead and manage the 5-generation workforce, because we got 5 generations in the workforce right now. So it's like, okay, how do I coach, consult, and help people to think through that, and how you can be innovative and thinking through that, innovative, and how you do governance. Talk about what's happening with boards at board levels. What happens when people are talking about how can we be more inclusive, and people are dealing with issues around, you know, DEI. So, okay, how do I manage that? Right now, I'm bringing people to do that, and I do that through innovation and change. And then I do a lot of facilitation too. Okay. But people are trying to have difficult conversations. Yeah. It's like, okay, how do we help you to think differently about how you can have those, you know, innovation conversations? I mean, if we talk about what's just some of the things that are happening in our community, some of the things that are happening in our nation. Okay. My thing is like, I'm a creative force for good. I use innovation and change through speaking, coaching, consulting, and facilitation to help you to be able to do that.
I love it. I love it. So you already answered my next question, but let's talk about your book. Tell the audience about your book. Yes.
So this is the book that's currently out. It's called Adventures in Leadership. And so in 2022, I took a journey to Tanzania and I did Mount Kilimanjaro. Okay. So I trekked Mount Kilimanjaro, the highest freestanding mountain in the world.
By choice. He did this by choice.
Yeah, by choice.
Okay.
So summited Mount Kilimanjaro, came back, and people were asking me, wanted to write about it. Okay. Bringing me in and come in and speak about it, because that's what it's about adventure. Life is an adventure. Right. Being a leader is an adventure. So the book is called Adventures in Leadership. Okay. I got a couple copies for you. Yes, and one for you to take.
Oh, you signed. We can sign it. Okay. Okay. All right.
And yet the thing was, go ahead.
How would they get this book? What would they need?
So I mean, you can order it off of Amazon, or you could go to www.jordansydnor.com. Okay. Order it through there. But really, it was about really making coaching accessible. Because what happens is, a lot of times I do work with CEOs, I do, at executives, senior leaders, high potentials, they get access to coaching. But I'm like, we got to democratize coaching. But their organizations, everyone should have access to a coach. Like, I'm like, you got to treat your people like high profile athletes. Yeah. Like, you got to treat them like elite athletes and make that investment in their professional development. Right. And that's why I wrote Adventures in Leadership. It's 30 days. So it's the 30-day process. Okay. You get a quote. So it's something to reflect on, a quote from a leader from around the world. it gives you a question that you have to ask yourself, because that's what coaching is about.
Right.
Coaching is about not me giving you the answers, but you discovering the answers. So you ask the questions, then you get an adventure or an exercise, something that you can work on, then you make a commitment.
Okay.
And so at the end, you'll have 30 commitments,
Oh, wow.
30 things that you worked on. It has check-ins, so you check in with yourself.
Okay.
And it's really about helping you to think about, you can provide some coaching support for yourself, for your people. And it's really to make coaching accessible, because coaching is an important part of professional and personal development. Right. And so that's what Adventures in Leadership is all about.
This is awesome. I mean, I got so much going on. I know we got limited time, but I got so much going on. We're going to have you back in 30 days. I'm going to use one book, and I'm going to give one to a peer, and we're going to have a group conversation in 30 days.
Hey, look, let's do it.
Let's do it. Yes.
The next book will be out this late spring. Cool Fire. Ooh. It's called The Black Man's Odyssey, and it's a photographic poetic journey book.
Okay, nice. So that's nice.
It'll be 40 points.
Okay, nice. Are you like porn?
Oh yeah.
That's awesome. I'm a little porn.
We can talk about.
Yeah, we
talk
can
about that.
Yeah, we could. Yeah,
we got some stuff there.
So, final question. Of course, Chronicles of Transformative Change and Impact. 2 questions actually. Okay. What is the impact that you're hoping to leave as part of your legacy? And what is the biggest change that you've made in your journey of your life?
I would ask that the impact is the world is a better place because I'm here. Right? It's a more beautiful, blessed, and loving place because I showed up and invested in the world. I think one of the things I've learned is to say I'm enough.
I like that.
I'm enough, right? Yeah. That no matter what happens, and it's not about just performance, and say, okay, what makes us successful? What makes me successful? That I'm able to love myself. I'm able to receive love, and I'm able to share love.
Awesome.
And helping make the world a more blessed place, and being, like I said, a creative force for good.
Creative force for good. I love that. Creative force for good. Because you are. You guys just don't know. We just picked the tip of the iceberg today. Thank you so much. I really appreciate you so much. You're a breath of fresh air, and you drop so many nuggets. And I'm going to go back and I cannot wait for my listening audience to hear this. So you guys, thank you. Let's give them a round of applause. We appreciate you. Thank you.
Thank you for all. Thank you for all that you're doing. Thank you for this invitation. And thank you for the Chronicles of Transformative Change and Impact.
I appreciate that. Thank you so much. You have a blessed day. Thank you.
Have a blessed one. You all have a blessed one.
Thank you.
Peace.
Bye-bye.
Thank you for joining us on Chronicles of Transformative Change and Impact. I hope today's stories inspired you to take your own journey toward impact and transformation. Remember, every vision has the power to create change, one step and one story at a time. Be sure to tune in next time as we continue to explore the quests that shape our world. Until then, keep striving, keep transforming.